Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for today's How to Best Prepare for a Software Transition webinar. My name is Lauren Hogan, and I'm a Regional Marketing Coordinator here at JMT. We're very excited to have our own Joel Wright lead us in a webinar today. He's one of our Intact Solutions consultants here at JMT. He's just going to go over everything in a moment, but just a couple of housekeeping notes before I turn it over. If you have any questions during the webinar today, please go ahead and submit them into the Q&A section as you think of them. We'll save them all until the end of the presentation, but don't hesitate to submit them as they come. Also, just a reminder that we'll send you both some handouts and the recording of today's webinar within 24 hours after it has concluded. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Joel, to get us started.
Perfect. Thanks, Lauren. And welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to join in and learn about software transitions and how best to prepare. I think just based on the title, I have to assume that maybe you're looking at software, and so hopefully this is going to be very educational for as you look and kind of identify what a software solution can do for your organization. Hopefully you could take away a couple of things from today to assist with that transition. So as far as the agenda, I wanted to briefly start about JMT Consulting, just spend a slide on our history and who we are. And then I want to talk about 3 challenges that we find during software transitions, and of course, give you 3 tips. So it's a webinar of 3 here. And we'll also end it with talking about some of the success factors that JMT has implemented to really assist our clients with having a successful software transition. And as Lauren mentioned, feel free to use the Q&A. I'll probably stop midway through and just check to see if anybody has any questions. So the more, we could actually keep this somewhat between the presenter and the guests, the better for me, because I have a tough time talking for long amounts of time, especially since I've had a lot of meetings this morning. So anyway, let's go on ahead and get it started. So we were founded, that lady there on the right is Jackie Mtiso, and she was a founder of JMT Consulting. For those of you that are new to learning about JMT, she was a CFO at a nonprofit organization, and she went through a couple of software transitions, and the consultants she was using were just below par, is a PC way of saying it, I guess. She had some tough transitions, and what it led her to do is have to get really into the weeds with the technology that she was implementing. And through getting in the weeds and getting really technical with it, she was able to fine tune it for her nonprofit, which ultimately led to a lot of great skill and knowledge about systems, and she's moved that into helping the nonprofit community. So it's what founded JMT, was through her bad experience. She thought there's got to be a better way, and so now here we are. We've been around for 30 years, which is just, it's amazing for any institution to be around for 30 years, but we're very excited about it. And through those 30 years, we've helped roughly 2,000 nonprofits across the United States and actually across the globe to implement software and do it successfully. So our experience is probably the greatest in a nonprofit that you could find definitely within the United States. We're headquartered in Paterson, New York, but Jackie actually moved to Nashville. I think she wanted some warmer weather and probably some good barbecue. So she moved to Nashville, and we have an office there. We have a satellite office there in Manhattan. Lauren's in Austin. I work remotely. I'm in Dallas. And we actually have an office in Melbourne, Australia now through an acquisition in January 2020. So we're a global company, which is exciting because we could service our clients 24/7 because the time change right now, since our time did change a couple of weeks ago, is a 9-hour difference between Dallas and Melbourne. So basically, whenever they're starting their day and ending it is whenever we start our day. So it's been fun to get to know the different time changes with that new acquisition. But our team is made up of CPAs, other basically folks that have dedicated some part of their career or their time towards nonprofit organizations. So really all we do each and every day is live and breathe nonprofit. So enough about us. Let's talk about you. You're going through a software findings process, and you've done it. You've selected the right software solution for your organization. Now what? Well, during the discovery phase and looking, hopefully the vendor you selected had walked you through the implementation strategy prior to making a commitment. But what we see here is that the industry average for software transitions, there seems to be an issue here, right? So we have a 29% success, challenged is 53%, failed 18%. This study was done by the Standish Group. I believe it was done in 2017, so it's a little bit older, but we see that the metrics tend to be the same. And if you see here, the numbers are based on cost overruns, on-time delivery, and unrealized goals. So that's, basically it went over budget, right? They didn't go live on time, and whatever the software said it was going to do in the beginning didn't end up doing it. So only 29% were seeing success, but that's terrible, right? And why is that? And we take this very seriously because we are a mid-sized company. And talking about JMT, I think we're a good fit to suit pretty much any scale of nonprofit, unless you're kind of up in the $1 billion range. I feel like there's usually technology solutions that are custom fit for that, but we could scale with any of them. And the only way we're going to grow is to make sure that we have good reviews and we have people that are raving about us. And so we take this very seriously about why are these, why is the industry success only 29%? And what we could basically summarize it to is this ever-going battle between technology versus people. It's fun stuff. So just looking at it, and this is covering the 3 challenges here. Challenge 1 is people and change management. The thing is that whenever you're going through a software transition, it's creating change. And as we all know, change creates stress, anxiety. You don't know what that's going to do to your role if you're a contributor at an organization. If everybody's talking about automation, what does that mean? What's the current status of your staff in making a change to the software? Are they open to it? Do they understand there needs to be a need? And also, what resources do you have available to manage the software transition? Do you have folks that are available that have time in their day to actually partake in the conversion of your data and the implementation of a new system? The other thing we find is that organizations have unrealistic expectations. So I've been on the sales side for most of my career, and I'll be the first to say I've been bullied into saying yes to meet a timeline that probably isn't realistic. So, if we're here at May 1st and you're looking for a new software to go live by, say, June 1st, obviously, depending on what that software is going to do for you, that's a pretty tight timeline for anything, I would say. So is your expectation a little bit unrealistic, and are you kind of bullying the vendor to say yes? As we always say, the more time you can dedicate towards a conversion or an implementation of a new software, the better. So anyway, these are things that we define as kind of concerns. It's not always a vendor. Potentially, it's also your expectations. This next slide here is inventory. Just making sure that you understand what you have, in what format, and how you're able to basically share that, because you're basically going to have to take data out and put data in. And so understanding if it's on your server, how can you extract that information? Depending on that format, it may impact that go live date. So making sure you understand the inventory and being cognizant of that, and as well as your vendor that you're going to be working with, making sure they understand what sort of information and data you have and what format is just a good rule of thumb. So obviously, we kind of covered the challenges here on people versus technology, change management, unrealistic expectations, and making sure you track your inventory. But there's a lot of success stories, and so here are some tips that we think tend to be a great indicator for success. So just touching on the people aspect, we were talking about how change is scary. We could override that because what you want to try and do is get your people, your staff, as invested into making a change as possible. Because if you know that there's a better way and you're a leader within your organization, you just want to make sure that your team also understands that there's got to be a better way, and they got to be open to looking for it and identifying it. So the more involved you keep your staff that would be impacted by this new software involved in both the discovery process, the demonstrations of the new systems, the better it's going to be, because they are at that point invested to make sure that this software is going to be a success, because they see the big picture. They see exactly how it's going to impact your mission, how it's going to make things a little bit more seamless. And rather than being scared of a change, because if they're not involved and all of a sudden you say, yeah, we just signed a contract with this new vendor, we're going to be going through this and it's going to do this, this, and this, it's going to create a little bit of anxiety. But if they're aware in the beginning, then they're invested with it. And whenever it does go live, they're going to be more inclined to being involved and learning as much about that system as possible, because they were part of that decision process. So motivate your people, look big picture, and determine the appropriate staff members that you would like to be involved with the software. A lot of times that's pretty simple because it's departmental, unless it's maybe executive management software or something like that. Most software, it's going to be departmental, so you pretty much know which staff members would be involved, but sometimes it's additional people like maybe IT or HR. So we'll lead into that in a minute. The other thing is make sure that you understand what you want. So identify that ideal solution, especially as you're going through vetting. You obviously know that your current system, you have some things that you're doing or your software that it's doing, and it's probably a little bit tedious or manual. So make sure you truly identify what in a dream world do you want. Identify that ideal solution. The other thing is make sure you have your existing processes documented. It could be as simple as just a Google, like a Google sheet or a Word document. Do you at least say, if we're going through, say, a procurement, then this is the workflow that we have today. Maybe it's just like a paper document. Or, if you want it to go a certain way, then you could just say, well, we want a couple of layers that we could have for approval in there. So whatever the processes are, make sure if you could try and get them documented in even the simplest form, it's just going to make a big impact, because it kind of draws a picture for your consulting or even software partner to understand what you're doing today and where there could be improvements. The last thing here, which is probably the biggest, is just make sure you do your vetting right. Vetting is hard. There's a lot of technology vendors out there, and if you're looking at working with a solution directly, it's really hard to identify, because a lot of the features and functionalities today tend to have some of the same components. I was working with a prospect not too long ago, and she's like, Joel, did this other company copy this one? Because it seems like they have a lot of the same features. And it's just the truth. I mean, everything's moving into visual aspects. Newer software has dashboards. It's much more intuitive. There's some AI components of kind of monitoring the way you're utilizing the system, and it tracks it. So these modern cloud systems tend to kind of, they almost mesh together, because there's so much functionality that looks the same. So make sure you do your diligence a little bit deeper. Look at their GuideStar. What is their GuideStar rating? Are their employees happy? There's actually review systems out there that we utilize quite a bit called G2 Crowd that takes real life reviews and maps them out with the different software vendors, taking actual user reviews and putting it together in different sort of side-by-side analysis, as well as graphs that you could check out. So make sure you do your right vetting. And then this other question, the end here, will this solution be the right fit for your organization 10 years down the road? If you're with a system right now that you've had in place for 10 years, it's likely that system, and if it's doing things great, then no need to change. But 10 years of a software, I think you're getting your money out of the product. That's a very long time to have a system. And as we know, technology is consistently changing. So every 10 years, it's likely that there may be something else out there, even shorter, 5 years, 6 years, that may be better. I mean, as it continues to evolve, the next big thing in 10 years, who knows what it'll be, especially today with artificial intelligence and all the things that we see. But at the same time, you want to make sure that whatever you are purchasing is not going to be irrelevant in 2 or 3 years. If you could say in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I'm confident this system will be, still leading edge, then you're in a good place. So those were the 3 tips. Motivate your people, document as much as you can what you're currently doing, so that way whoever you're going to partner with understands what you're doing today and they can make recommendations appropriately for how it could be done in the new software. And then make sure you're vetting your software partner or consultant as well as you can, get those referrals and that sort of thing. So with that, I wanted to end it just with some of the success pieces that we have at JMT that we feel really kind of lift up those tips there and what we offer. First off, this was a slide, 29% success rate. We're constantly managing and tracking this. We utilize Salesforce internally for our project management, as well as a couple of other tools to make sure that we have each of the milestones for any conversion or implementation met within the time that we mutually agreed upon with the client. And also we offer essentially this guaranteed proposal, and we're able to meet within budget. Because if you go back to this slide here, the main reasons why it's 53% challenged and 18% failed is because it went over budget, it went over timeline, or the software didn't do what it said it was going to do. And so we're able to meet each one of those things extremely well across the industry average. And so if you were to look at our implementation process, it's pretty simple. We want to design, if we're talking about an accounting system, we design your chart of accounts, we build your database, then we want to convert your data into the new system. We deploy it by educating your staff and creating a sandbox environment, and then ultimately going live. And then after the fact, we come back and we make sure your client or our client is using the system appropriately and they had a good experience. We're involved with our clients for a partnership. It's not a one-time transaction. We want to maintain that lifelong relationship with our clients to make sure that, the system that we recommended, we're going to stand by it and make sure they're using it appropriately. And so we have a pretty simple implementation process, but there's a lot that goes into it. We want to make sure that everybody is informed and knows who to go to during an implementation. And so all of our implementation projects include a manager that will be the quarterback of the project. And then within that, there's going to be solution architects, implementation consultants, technical specialists, educators. There's going to be a whole team of folks that the project manager is going to unleash during the implementation to ultimately get you to that go live date and make sure that you understand the system and how it works. So there's quite a bit that goes into it. And here's just a sample. We create a smart sheet with each one of our prospects or new clients that were coming on board with basically, all the different milestones. So kind of going back here to this design, build, deploy. We have design, build, deploy right here. And we create, dates. We want to understand if anybody's going on vacation, what other sort of aspects should we know about during this implementation? If there's summer vacation or spring break or whatever it may be, we want to make sure during that initial kickoff discovery phase that we understand those things and build it into our start and end date. So it's a very mutual process of defining these things. And it kind of goes back to that challenge of unrealistic expectations. We try and map those out right away from the beginning to eliminate any sort of unrealistic components that maybe our clients are expecting. The education is also another huge piece because a new software doesn't mean you're going to be doing the same processes, right? Hopefully the new software is going to create some change in process and a little bit of, maybe less manual entry or whatever it may be. But a new system also means you got to learn your processes over. And so we understand personalities, they all learn differently. So we have a lot of different ways of training folks on how to utilize the new system, whether it's visual, written, hands-on, actually working in the system and deploying it. And then we do testing. We do assessments with the users that are going to be using it to make sure they're able to do things appropriately. So it's almost like a course, like an actual course that they're being assessed. And then, just mostly recently, obviously with COVID, it's been live online education that we record. And we also do ongoing webinars for our clients, monthly webinars that are just ongoing training. We also do, we used to have a live event that happened each year our clients would come to, which was all educational, had a lot of CPE that was involved with it. And we're starting to get those back up and going, but they're all virtual. So a lot of different education. We want to focus on that side because the more you know about the system, the better you're going to be able to manage it. And the more successful you're going to be within your own department, and ultimately, hopefully, the more successful your nonprofit's going to be because you're going to have software that is a true tool for you that will help drive the mission. And learning it's not something you learn right away. We take the crawl, walk, run, fly methodology here and disregard the timelines below. But it's because it's different depending on the system you're going to be looking at. But really, we want to make sure that you could at least get in the system and know how to run specific reports and do basic features initially by the go live. And we continue and train you to that way. By the end of it, you could be the next Jackie Tiso that starts your own consulting firm. So that's really our methodology there. And that's ultimately all I wanted to run through. So to recap, just looking at the major components, keep your people involved, make sure they're as involved as possible in the process. And I think that's probably the biggest one. Any sort of software conversion impacts people's lives, and the more involved they could be in the beginning, please make it so as much as you can. Take inventory, try and document what you can, whatever you can, kind of put together, piece together before you make a decision. Make sure you have that outlined because it's going to really help your solution provider to make best recommendations on how it could work in their system. And then lastly, just make sure your expectations are open. Like I said, the more time you could dedicate towards a software conversion or transition, the better, because we all know you have your full-time job to do. And then whenever you're going through a software transition, it's not always easy. You have to be available to maybe assist in walking us through some of your existing data or updating your data. And so the more time you could dedicate to it, the more time we have for training, and it just ends up being a much better experience rather than rushed. So with that, I think I'm done. Lauren, do I see one question that came through?
Yep, we have one question from the Q&A. When you convert client data, do you have a rule of thumb about how many years of data to convert, or do you recommend saving the old files on the old system for reference?
I wish I had an easy answer, but I think it's more about what your expectation is. So what do you prefer? And I could probably answer that a little bit more specifically if I knew what system you're using today and what system you're looking at, because if you're looking to move to the cloud, then if you have a organizational plan to maybe move off the server and move everything to the cloud, then that answer would be differently than if you're already on the cloud. And if you're using a subscription product, we probably want to get as much of that historical as we can. So it's really what you want, and kind of setting up those expectations, going back to the expectation aspect, sharing what it is that you want to be converted into the new system, and then allowing your partner to explain if they could meet that or if they had any other recommendations would probably be the way I'd go about it. But great question.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions they would like to submit to the Q&A? Can wait a little bit on that. But thank you so much, Joel, for your presentation today. And thank you everyone for joining us. Looks like we haven't had any come through, but if you do have any questions following this webinar, feel free to reach out to us. We would love to help just at jmtconsulting.com. And just a reminder, we'll send out the slides and a recording within 24 hours. So we hope everyone has a great rest of their day, and thank you for attending.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.